Hi, my name's Boon. I'm a late diagnosed autistic human being from France living in the UK, and I make videos about my own personal experience as a late diagnosed autistic person. And today I wanted to talk about autistic masking because, well, it's something I suffered from a great deal in my life, and I posted a poll on my community tab on YouTube, and 52% of the participants, the poll participants, said that they've masked heavily all their life and they don't know who they are anymore. I thought it was an important topic to talk about. It's a topic we hear a lot about when we hear about late diagnosed autistic people, because we tend to, usually when we're late diagnosed, when we're diagnosed later in life, it means that we weren't spotted as early as other people who aren't necessarily as high masking. Of course, there are other reasons why we weren't diagnosed earlier, but one of those is that we mask our autistic traits more. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with a kind of a definition of what autistic masking is in case you don't know. So on the National Autistic Society website, masking is defined as a strategy used by some autistic people, consciously or unconsciously, to appear non-autistic in order to blend in and be more accepted in society. Masking can happen in formal situations such as at school or work, and in informal situations such as at home with family or socializing with friends. Or even on your own. A lot of people say that they mask even when they're alone and they don't know how to take off the mask. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. It's also referred to as camouflaging. It's basically trying to pass as neurotypical. It involves so many things, and I'm sure masking looks different for everyone because we're all different people. So this is going to be about my own experience with masking. It's interesting because I often don't know really where I stand with autistic masking, because I know it's something I struggle with. I know it's something I do. And as I mentioned in a previous video, I score very highly on the masking quiz, but I feel like, first of all, my masking isn't as effective as some people. I'm not very good at masking. For example, my partner, who is undiagnosed ADHD, is much better at masking than I am, which makes him more successful in social situations. And I think not all autistic people are able to mask, first of all, and not all of us are able to mask effectively. Not all of us are able to pass as neurotypical people. And I don't think it's either a good or a bad thing. I just think it's just a neutral fact, but it has its consequences. My partner, who is better at masking than I am, it might explain why he is more successful professionally, for example, whereas I messed up most of my job interviews. But he pays a high price for it because he has lost touch with his true self more than I have. I feel like I've been lucky enough to never quite lose sight of who I am deep down, no matter how much masking I was doing. But something else I've observed through talking with my partner, through hearing other autistic people talk about masking online, I've noticed that my masking is a bit different, in the sense that it's the reason why I mask that's a bit different from most people, I think. Because I feel like most people mask to blend in with the neurotypicals and be accepted into society. I feel like the reason you mask isn't that you're trying to fit in, it's that you're trying to not be rejected, which kind of sounds like the same thing, but the thing is I have so much trauma around rejection and humiliation. Like I have a lot of rejection sensitive dysphoria because I was just stigmatized and humiliated so much throughout my life, not only by like people at school but also my own family. I have learned how to blend in with the wall, like the background, so that no one, and make myself as inconspicuous as possible, just so that people will leave me alone and not hurt me further. It's not so much me trying to blend in and pass as neurotypical, if that makes sense. Because I feel like when I look back at my childhood, I think I understood pretty early on that I was different and that I wasn't gonna fit in. And I think I was okay with that, which is not something I hear a lot. I often hear about autistic people say they were desperately trying to fit in and make friends and stuff. It's not that I didn't do that at all. It's just that I guess to some extent I knew that I was never gonna quite fit in, and I had made my peace with that. And I relied almost solely on my special interests to give myself comfort, give meaning to my existence. And honestly, I don't think I have a very strong social drive. My partner, who is ADHD, has a higher social drive than me. I don't know if it's because he has ADHD and needs that dopamine, because I've learned that ADHD people tend to have those contradictory needs and wants of like needing to interact with people but also struggling with it and stuff like that, whereas I don't have that contradiction. Of course, I'm not saying I'm okay being lonely and I don't want to see anyone, I don't want to have any friends. That's not true. I don't think I could live alone. And sometimes I suffer from not having friends. Of course, I love sharing things with people. I love spending time with family and stuff. But I'm not gonna go out of my way just to socialize because I don't have enough of that social drive. There have been studies that have been done that have shown that autistic people don't get the same satisfaction from social interactions as neurotypicals. I definitely feel that. Like, I feel like from my own observations since figuring out I'm autistic, I've been observing things and people around me, and I think I understand the main difference between neurotypicals and autistic people in interactions. It's that the neurotypicals don't care so much about the contents of the interaction, of the conversation, the subject that we're talking about. They care about the interaction itself, and that's what gives them satisfaction, which explains why they do so much small talk and stuff like that. And it doesn't always matter that they don't have anything in common with the other person that they're talking to. It's just the exchange that they're having that matters, basically, the fact that they're exchanging. Whereas for autistic people, myself included, the subject is more important than the interaction itself, which is why I struggle with small talk, which is why I find no interest in talking to someone I don't have anything in common with, which is something that came up in my autism assessment. Because while I was talking to my therapist about, the person who diagnosed me, I was talking about how I struggle with like neighbors and things like that because we just have nothing in common, and I just don't understand the point of going out and talking with neighbors if we don't have any common interests or anything like that. The fact that I can't see the point in just having a social interaction, no matter what we talk about. I think that's the main difference between neurotypicals and autistic people. When I see neurotypicals, well, I should say non-autistic people, when I see non-autistic people talk to each other, like really go out of their way, like to seek human interactions, I'm like, wow. I actually never understood, like I always thought, ever since I was a child, I always thought, don't they have better things to do? Not in a an insulting way, but just like I thought I didn't have time for that. I didn't want that. I wasn't interested in that. I was like, I'd rather just go watch that movie that I love, or like go play with the animals, or like basically do whatever I liked at the time. I could never understand why people placed so much importance on talking to each other even when it didn't seem interesting. Like I just didn't, because I didn't have that, I just don't have that social gratification after talking to someone. Most of the time after talking to someone, I feel a lot of anxiety. And I spend hours, if not days, replaying the interaction in my head and figuring out everything I did wrong. It's not something that it's always taxing for me. I always come out of it stressed and tired. I don't come out of it feeling gratified and like better. I don't know. It's not something that energizes me, basically. It takes energy from me. So it's not something that I actively seek out. Back when I was thinking about, going to social events, like making new friends as a young adult and stuff, I always thought, what's the point of just like all of us coming together and talking about nothing in particular? I always thought if I'm gonna like meet new people and try to make friends, I don't want the center of attention to be the social element. I want there to be something else, like an activity that we do together, or a particular subject that we have in common that we can talk about, just so that just getting to know each other isn't at the center of it, and like the social interaction isn't at the center of it. There's something else on top, like for example playing board games, or I don't know, just uniting over a physical activity. I don't know. From a pretty young age, I knew that I just wasn't interested in socializing that much. Like, I didn't understand why so many people were into things like, at the time when I was little, MSN, and like then later on Facebook, which was really big when I was a child/teenager, before Snapchat and Instagram and all that, and way before TikTok, obviously. I just couldn't understand the point of it, especially Facebook. Like, all of my friends were on Facebook, and I thought, what a waste of time. I just couldn't understand the point of it, because I thought, I already wasn't very popular, and I didn't really get along with most of the people at my school, and so I thought, what's the point of having to endure being around them during the day, and then getting home and having to deal with them again, but online? Like, I couldn't understand the point of that. To me, like, as soon as I got home, I would forget everything about school and just focus on what brought me comfort and joy. And I just couldn't see myself going on social media, and I still don't. Like, social media is still something that I don't enjoy. So all that to say that I never felt like I needed to mask in order to fit in, because I felt like I didn't fit in, and no matter how hard I tried, I was never going to, and I wasn't motivated enough to try, basically. On the other hand, I was bullied a lot, like I said, not only by my school friends, but also at home, which meant that I felt I didn't feel good enough. I felt like a freak. That's where my masking came in, to try and avoid getting hurt. So I would try to adapt to whoever I was around so that they would like me and I wouldn't be rejected or mocked or, humiliated. So that's where most of my masking came in. I would say that I definitely mask with everyone. The person that I mask the least around is my partner. I wouldn't say that I don't mask at all, because I think I do, but it's the equivalent of neurotypical masking, it's not a masking that's conscious, and it's not a masking that is so great that it's taxing energy-wise, or it doesn't give me stress or anything like that. With everyone else on this earth, including my own parents, including the person I used to call my best friend, I mask a shit ton. I would say the other person I didn't mask so much around was my great aunt, who I mentioned in previous videos, who passed away in early 2023. I would say that before I met my partner, she was probably the person I masked the least around. She was probably the one who knew me the most, and because I felt safe around her. And it's all about that for me. It's I am able to unmask around the people I feel safe with. And if I don't feel safe around you for some reason, I'm not gonna unmask no matter how hard I try, because I can't let go of those defenses, you know, because I'm so scared of getting hurt. For a long time, I felt like my partner was the only one who truly knew me, and I didn't understand why, and I was so frustrated. And I would talk to therapists about it. I would say, like, how come I'm only relaxed and like natural around my partner and like no one else? How come I'm not like that around my parents? And then I figured out that my parents were quite abusive, as I mentioned in another video about childhood trauma. And I understood that it wasn't safe for me to be myself around them because they were toxic. And I thought, okay, that's why I put on this mask, which at the time, long before I knew that I was autistic, I would use the word mask. I would say to my therapist, I feel like I'm putting on a mask. I can't believe none of them thought of autism. And then I was like, okay, but then why do I feel like I'm wearing a mask even around other people, like my in-laws, my friends, and everyone except my partner? And that's when autism became a better answer than just PTSD, you know? So basically, I've made a list of all the things that are involved in my masking, all the things that make up my mask, my autistic masking. I've made a couple of shorts on my channel, and I've posted a post on my community tab and on my Instagram account as well. So you can go look at that if you want to. I'm just going to go into a bit more detail now about each point. The first point that I made about my autistic mask is pretending to be joyful and acting funny and being making jokes, even though I don't feel like that on the inside. So what I mean by that is I have this kind of like funny jokester mask that I've had since childhood. As soon as I figured that whenever I made jokes, people liked me more and so weren't as likely to pick on me as much, I started like doing it a lot. I remember like as soon as primary school, and to this day I still do that a lot, especially with my in-laws. We will call them on the phone because we don't live in the same country. They live in Switzerland, so we call them multiple times a week. And I'll no matter what mood I'm in, even if I'm feeling kind of depressed or stressed that day, as soon as I call them, I become this joyful jokester that laughs about everything and desperately tries to create humor in every sentence or whatever, which is tiring and doesn't reflect how I'm feeling. And it's almost like I can't help it, because I feel like if I don't do that, I'm not going to be likable. I don't know how else to handle the interaction. And I'm scared that if I don't do that, I'll be rejected, because my natural self, my instinctive self, wasn't liked very much by people growing up. So I internalized that my natural self isn't good enough for people. So I have to pretend to be more likable. And it's all a conscious effort. The second point is forcing myself to make eye contact, even though it's really uncomfortable. This is quite straightforward, and I think it's one of the most common things that people do when they're masking, autistic people, is we don't like, most of us don't like eye contact. It feels intrusive, it feels almost like intimate, it feels really, it makes me feel very vulnerable, it makes me feel uncomfortable. But I will force my eye contact because I have learned that's what neurotypicals expect from me. That's how you're supposed to interact with people. You're supposed to look them in the eye to show them that you're listening, to show them that, you know, whatever. So I will force myself to do that, and it doesn't look very natural a lot of the time. Like, I remember my partner telling me that whenever I was with my in-laws, I would sit very straight and like stare at them very intensely, and he thought at the time, he thought, wow, she's really engaged, like she really cares about them and stuff. And no, it was just me being so freaking stressed about doing good eye contact, and it was so uncomfortable, and my body was so tense, and it didn't look natural. First of all, I took eye contact literally and thought it meant staring into someone else's eyes, which now I know that's not necessarily what eye contact means. And I would try to stare into their eyes for as long as possible, and I was like counting every time I was blinking and like taking every opportunity to look away. And then I was like, okay, I've looked away too long now, I need to look back into their eyes. And like everything was controlled and calculated. It was exhausting. I don't know how I managed to keep up with conversations. Yeah, it was so uncomfortable, so tiring. And I always remember telling my partner, like, I don't like it when we're sitting across from your parents or anyone else. Like, I like it when we're walking side by side, or we're both looking in the same direction at the TV or out at the landscape, or if the lighting is dim and we're not looking at each other as much. And I would tell him, like, that's when I feel the most comfortable, that's when I feel like I'm the most able to relax. And now I know why, because there wasn't as much eye contact involved. So yeah, I will force eye contact even though it feels uncomfortable, and sometimes my eyes will do weird things, like they will twitch or whatever, because it's so unnatural for me. And then I'm like, oh my god, they must have seen that, I must have looked so weird, blah blah blah, and just it's a whole internal monologue. Not great. So that's the second point in my autistic masking. The third point is forcing myself to have normal back and forth conversation, even though that's not my natural way of interacting with people. So naturally, like a lot of autistic people, I do a lot of info dumping. I like to talk and talk and talk, which is why I love making videos, and which is why when I'm not making videos, I tend to have monologues, like with myself, where I just verbally express my thoughts and feelings, and that really helps me process everything. And I like to do that with other people, and I don't like to be interrupted. I don't like it when my string of thought is interrupted by someone saying something, and then just basically having a back and forth of like someone else saying something and me having to reply and stuff like that. Like, I've been told a lot in the past that I gave very blunt answers, or sometimes I didn't answer at all. Like, I remember long before I was diagnosed, my partner would be like, why'd you not answer sometimes when people tell you something? And I'm like, because I don't have anything to answer. And he would say, like, it's weird because your parents do the same thing, it seems to be a family thing. And now I know it's just an autism thing because my parents are most likely autistic like me. I didn't understand that there was anything wrong with that. I was like, I'm not gonna answer if I don't have anything to answer. So I really struggled with the back and forth nature of conversation a lot. And I will force that. I will force myself not to info dump or overshare. Let the other person speak and then comment on that and respond. And it's so unnatural for me. It takes a lot of my energy and focus. And yeah, basically I like to say everything I have to say on a certain topic before moving on to a different topic. And I don't like it when we like switch subjects in the middle of a conversation. Is so frustrating to me when I haven't said everything I had to say, and then we don't come back to the subject, and I don't feel comfortable coming back to the subject because I don't want to seem annoying. So then I have to, I don't know, I hate it. The fourth point is repressing the urge to talk too much about what I'm really interested in, because I don't want to come across as annoying or egocentric. So basically that has to do with like special interests, especially like these past few months. My special interest has been autism and neurodivergence, and so that's mostly what I want to talk about all the time, and I have to really repress myself from doing that because I don't want to annoy other people. Once again, all of that just so that I don't come across as unlikable and people reject me or hurt me in any way. So I will, like, I don't know, pace myself. I don't know how to say that, but like be like, okay, now it's fine, I can talk a little bit about that. Or if the other person mentions the subject, and I'm like, okay, then, and I can talk about it because the other person mentioned it. When I was younger, for example, you know, I loved anything to do with fantasy, and especially Harry Potter, so I would talk about it with anyone and everyone. Or like animals, horses, snails. I would talk a lot about the subjects that I was passionate about. I made a whole video about my special interests. I could see that people were getting a bit annoyed. I must have internalized that that was not the right thing to do if I wanted people to like me. So now I don't do that as much, which is frustrating because that's what I like to do in a conversation. I like to talk about the things that I love, which is why in the future I'd like to have like more neurodivergent friends, autistic friends, because I feel like we could info dump at each other and that would be really nice. And that's what I do with my partner a lot of the time. We don't really have like normal neurotypical conversations, which is why I don't mask as much around him, because he also doesn't really like eye contact. So we don't have that pressure of looking into each other's eyes, or he also struggles with back and forth conversations and info dumps, and so we can do that together, and it's like a much more natural way of interacting. The fifth point is acting interested in what the other person is telling me, even though I really don't care and would rather talk about something else. Again, it's kind of related to the previous point. A lot of the things that people talk about, I'm not interested in. Again, because it's not the interaction in itself that I'm interested in, it's what we talk about. So people will talk about, well, small talk, or they will talk about some friend or family member of theirs that I don't know, and like they'll start telling me about their life, and I'm like, I don't even know this person, I don't care. So then I pretend to be interested even though I'm not, and because I don't want to come across as an asshole. Yeah, and then people will talk about all kinds of things like their work, their children, their hobbies, and I'm like, if none of that matches my own interests, I'm like, I get really bored, and it's hard to keep up with the conversation and like listen actively, you know, and pretend that I'm interested. So a lot of the time, like I said, I'm not very good at masking because a lot of the time I just don't have enough motivation, social drive. So I think a lot of the time people can tell I'm not really interested in what they're saying. And honestly, I don't really care. But for people that I care about, for people that are important to me, I don't want to hurt their feelings. Sixth point is repressing most of my stims or reverting to smaller, more discreet, socially acceptable stims, which aren't necessarily as effective because I don't want people to think I'm weird. So like I mentioned in my video about stimming, I was stigmatized a lot my whole life because of my stims, mostly like my skin picking stim, my knuckle cracking, my leg bouncing, stuff like that, or like my vocal stims. So I learned to repress most of these when I'm around other people. I think that's the thing that I masked the most about most of my life, even around my partner, but it wasn't conscious. I wasn't like, oh, I'm repressing myself right now. I just had internalized not to do these things around anyone, so that I unconsciously didn't do these things around my partner either, even though I know it's fine. It's safe to do so. I would repress from, you know, I would repress the urge to rock back and forth, for example, or I would be careful not to bounce my leg too much, or basically trying to not annoy, or basically trying to make other people feel comfortable around me mostly, which meant that my nervous system wasn't very regulated, which meant that I was more stressed. It's just a whole vicious cycle. But yeah, I don't stim as much as I need to when I'm around people, because I don't want to seem weird once again. Like, yeah, like as a child, other children were like, what's wrong with your thumbs and stuff like that. I would feel so embarrassed. I had such an intense sense of shame around my stims that I would desperately try to hide them. Like I would say like, oh, I hurt myself, blah blah blah. Like, so that's another big part of my masking, is repressing my stims. And so I'll do stims that are not as effective, like wiggling my toes or stuff like that, that aren't as ample movements as I would need. Or like repressing all of my vocal stems, except maybe a bit of humming from time to time if it's socially acceptable, but like repressing a lot of my natural behaviors just so I make other people comfortable around me, because my whole life my mother would say how much I made her uncomfortable or annoyed her because of my stems, and so yeah, I repressed a lot of that. My seventh point is being hyper aware of my every move at all times to make sure I appear normal. So that's like the main part of my masking is just that I don't act naturally around people. It's like no matter how hard I try, none of it comes naturally. I am like hyper aware of everything I do and say, every move, every like how I position my body, all of it to try and look relaxed and normal, and it's super tiring and stressful. Yeah, so like when neurotypicals are much more relaxed, like they don't necessarily think about those things, I think about every one of those things. I'm very hyper conscious, hyper aware of it all. Which means I'm never relaxed, I'm never, natural, and I get tired very quickly, I get stressed out very quickly, and then I need time to recover afterwards. Another similar point is forcing facial expressions and voice tone, even though naturally I have a pretty flat affect and monotone voice. So basically trying to come across as more expressive than I am naturally. I think, as you can tell from watching my videos, even though I do a bit of masking in my videos, obviously, I have a pretty monotone voice and a flat affect, which was confirmed by the psychiatrist who diagnosed me. I will often try and make myself more expressive because, like a lot of us, I think I've been told so many times in my life that basically I looked like this and this and that, even though it didn't reflect how I felt on the inside. Basically misinterpreting, miscommunicating of my emotions based on like my face and my voice tone. So I internalized that the way that I externalize my emotions is wrong, and so I needed to change it. Obviously, like practicing facial expressions, like I remember so many times asking my partner to tell me, like I would say like, okay, I'm gonna smile now and you tell me if that looks like a smile to you, and then I would smile and he'd be like, yeah, it's kind of small, even though in my head I was doing a big smile. And so then I would be like, okay, I'll smile more and more and you tell me when it's enough and stuff like that, like practicing in front of a mirror and stuff like that. I was really frustrated with myself because I thought I'm just so not expressive, and like a lot of the time people were like, are you upset? Are you okay? Are you sick? Are you this and this and that? Even though just on the inside I was fine, just because that's what my face was projecting. I don't know. Like even in videos, like at birthdays and stuff, I would be filmed or photographed, and then I would put so much effort into being expressive, and then afterwards I would watch the video or look at the pictures and be like, oh my god, I like my expression is so blank. My flat affect, my resting face isn't very nice looking, we'll say. So I scare people a lot because of that, or like people think something negative of me because my face looks a bit negative by nature because of my expression, my natural expression. And so yeah, I would feel so bad about not being able to express my emotions enough to people. So I would fake, just exaggerate facial expressions, especially as a teenager. I had been stigmatized so much by my mother because of the way I smiled in photos, for example. that I would just exaggerate, make like crazy faces in photos to compensate, to overcompensate. Like I remember as a child, my mom would be like, "Stop smiling like that. You look like your smile doesn't look natural in photos," because I wasn't showing any teeth, so I was doing something like, and then I was like, okay, I have to show teeth. So then I was like, and just none of it looked natural. When I look back at photos of me when I was younger, when I was a kid. And my dad is like that. He would say stuff like, when I was younger, people would think that I was in pain because of the way I smiled and stuff like that. And now looking back, I'm like, that sounds very autistic. So yeah, and like voice tone, because of my flat affect, I would like fake. Like I remember going to meet cat sitting clients, for example, because I do some cat sitting, and I would meet my cat sitting clients for the first time, and like I love animals with all my heart, but I was always worried that it wouldn't show on the outside, so I would overcompensate and like change my voice tone and like imitate other people that I've heard to make my voice sound more amicable, more friendly, more excited. And like I have had so many experiences with like job interviews where I did my very best, and then afterwards I was just told like, you didn't look like you wanted the job even, and I was like, what? And that was just so mind-blowing to me, and I would be like, no, you're wrong, like this is you misunderstood me. And they were like, well, you better work on that, thanks. So obviously that's something I've struggled a lot throughout my life, and just being told that just people misunderstanding how I'm feeling because of the way my face looks, you know? 9. Ignoring my needs, discomfort, fatigue, stress in the moment because I don't want to attract attention and seem needy, which means afterwards I often crash. So whenever I'm with people, my in-laws, for example, I often talk about my in-laws because those are the people I spend the most time with, because I'm not in touch with my biological family anymore, and I don't really have any friends anymore, and I am unemployed, so I just basically don't see anyone besides my partner and my in-laws. So when I'm around my in-laws, it's like I brace myself, and for the whole duration of the social interaction, I put all my needs on pause, and like I don't even receive the signals. I don't tend to my needs as I should. I don't listen to the signals telling me that I'm stressed and I need to relax. I don't listen to the signals telling me that I'm tired and should rest. I don't listen to the signals saying maybe you should eat something now, or you should drink, or you should go to the toilet, whatever. I just put everything on hold because I'm just so focused on the freaking social interaction and everything that it entails that I don't have any focus left for my own needs, and I ignore them. And like, for example, sensory stuff, I will ignore a lot of those because I'm scared that people won't understand, or they'll think like I basically don't want the attention to be on me. Like I won't tell that something's bothering me. I'll just internalize it. All that stuff keeps accumulating until I reach a breaking point when I'm like, I can't handle it anymore. And then I'll have meltdowns, I'll have panic attacks. Like last summer, I think it was, my in-laws visited and they were here for a little over a week, and I ignored my needs for that whole time. I didn't know I was autistic at the time. And I did so much masking as usual, and like on the last night, I remember we were all sitting in the living room watching a movie, and I just felt like I was gonna burst, and I couldn't breathe because I had so much anxiety that had been building up, and I just had to leave and go to my room and try to calm down, and I couldn't come back the entire evening, and I had to apologize on my phone. Like I was so embarrassed, but it would never have happened had I listened to my needs, had I not been masking as much. And thankfully over Christmas when my in-laws visited us and I knew about my autism and I had a better idea of how to manage my needs, I didn't have those moments as much. I still had them because it's still going to be taxing even if I don't mask as much, but I managed it more than before. Point number 10, keeping my thoughts and opinions to myself when someone says or does something that doesn't align with my values, pretending to like someone even if I really don't. Well, that's not something I do all the time because I'm pretty outspoken and I don't really, like I said, I'm not desperately trying to socialize. So like a lot of the time if someone says something that I don't agree with, or if I don't like someone, I'll show it. Usually you'll know, like I can't pretend, and like I'm very honest, and you can read everything on my face basically. I'm an open book. Again, like it's not something I do very successfully because I'm just so honest and I have such a strong sense of justice and right and wrong that if someone says something, I don't know, racist, just ignorant and hateful, I will call them out and I don't care. Even if I know that it's not putting me in the best position and it's not a very clever thing to do, I can't help it in the moment. And then afterwards I feel bad. But like I can't help it. Like it's the kind of thing that I try to do. I try to mask. I try to like keep my opinions to myself and like be friendly with everyone. But no matter how hard I try, my honesty still comes through, which has got me in trouble in the past. I know it sounds like a good thing, but I have had so many issues with like landlords because we've had such problematic landlords in the past. Beforehand, I would be like, okay, you're not gonna say anything, you're gonna keep your opinions to yourself, blah blah blah, you know, you're gonna act like you like them. And then in the moment, I'm incapable of doing that. I have made things worse, so many times worse for us, like my partner and I, for our situation because of that. So I wish I could mask more when it comes to that. Okay, number 11, not feeling comfortable talking about real issues in my life with neurotypicals or non-autistic people when they're related to my autism, because I know they won't get it and it might make things worse, which means I often feel like I can't share what really matters or what really troubles me and have really superficial interactions, even with close family members, leaving me feeling like I'll never be truly myself and loved for the whole me. So that's, I guess, one of the most painful aspects of masking for me is feeling misunderstood, not being able to really express what I'm feeling because I've been hurt so much in the past when I expressed how I was feeling. So I internalized all my emotions and I only show the positive emotions. And I don't like to be vulnerable because my brain has internalized that when I'm emotionally vulnerable, that's when I get hurt the most because of the toxic family that I come from. And so it's very difficult for me to like express my struggles, my daily struggles because of my autism or my mental health with people, and then for them to really understand, it leaves me feeling misunderstood a lot of the time, or like, and it really hurts because it's such a big part of my life, a big aspect of my struggles, that I wish that I could share it more for people to understand. I'm working on it, it's getting better, but it's still difficult. Like some days am really struggling, and I know that if I try to explain, they won't get it. I would just rather not even try, you know, because it's gonna make things worse. So I keep it in, and so I feel bad and I can't explain why I feel bad, and I have to pretend like I'm okay. That I think is really hard for me. Number 12, putting on makeup, wearing clothes, accessories I don't feel comfortable in just because I feel like that's what's expected of me and it will make me appear more likable and normal. So that's another form of mask. It's another mask for me, is like being more feminine. Like I mentioned previously that I don't feel very strongly about my gender. I'll make a video about that in the future, but I've never felt girly, I've never felt feminine. I just think of myself as a person basically. I don't define myself as like my gender. It's not an important part of my identity. And so I was never really like girly and feminine and stuff, but society tells you if you're a woman, you should have long hair, you should wear makeup, you should wear dresses and skirts, and you should wear heels, and you should wear earrings, and you should wear all kinds of jewelry, and you should behave like this and this and that. And so part of my masking is, while staying true to myself as much as possible, incorporating some of these things just so I come across as more normal, like more likable, because people are more friendly towards and more accepting of more feminine women who like follow the social norms, the gender norms, than women who don't. So subconsciously, I adopted some of these things, even though they don't feel natural to me, they don't feel right to me. Sometimes I'm wearing clothes and accessories and I'm like, this is not me, and I don't feel comfortable in them. But I feel like I had to wear them because of what society was telling me, you know, to try and fit in. Number 13, forcing myself to stand and sit properly, resisting the urge to stand and sit in positions that are most comfortable and natural to me but aren't socially acceptable. So what I mean by that is I've always felt very uncomfortable sitting with my feet on the ground. I was stigmatized a lot for that by my family, who thought I was so rude because I would sit with my knees like that. That's like the most comfortable position for me when I'm sitting at a table. I like to have my legs propped up somehow and like as close to my chest as possible. Even when I'm sitting on the couch, like I'll just twist myself in so many crazy positions that most people find really weird and think that they're uncomfortable, but to me they're very natural and comfortable. And so when I'm around people, I resist the urge to do that, kind of like stimming. So I'll force myself to sit in certain positions or stand in certain positions that are not comfortable for me. Because again, I don't want to seem like a freak, you know? And the last point is pretending to understand what people are telling me when I actually don't. So what I mean by that is it can be anything from like jokes, sarcasm that I don't get, but I'll pretend that I get it by laughing along with everyone else. It can be like I didn't quite catch what you said, but I'm too scared to ask you to repeat. So I will say, okay, even though I didn't get it. Things like that. It's just, again, it's all about not standing out, not becoming a target, not rubbing people the wrong way. My masculine is more about that than actively fitting in and being a part of society, because I have internalized that that's just not gonna happen for me, I think. So yeah, just generally not trying to make other people uncomfortable, even if it means making me uncomfortable, not becoming a target for bullying and stigmatizing, ostracizing, like, yeah, protecting myself. It's all about protecting myself. As a teenager, I felt strangely more like myself and more accepting of myself because I didn't have there weren't such big pressure. There wasn't as much pressure as when I became an adult, a lot of pressure from society. So I felt more comfortable in my own skin. I felt in some ways I was more unmasked because, or maybe it was just a different kind of mask, that I kind of turned my weird awkwardness into a strength to try and make myself look cool or something. Like I was the cool, nerdy, gothic kid. I don't know. Now that I have my diagnosis, I don't force things as much as I used to. I've started to unmask more. I've started to stim more around other people. I've started to not do as much eye contact, just do things that are more comfortable for me. And, a lot of us have heard growing up, like, oh, but just be yourself. What do you do normally that you can't do around me? Like, those are all things that I've heard. And it's so funny because, like a lot of autistic people, when I would hear things like, just be yourself, I was so confused because I was like, well, when I'm more myself, people don't seem to receive it well. They don't seem to accept it. It seems to rub them the wrong way. So I don't know what I should do. Like, I don't feel comfortable not being myself, but when I'm myself, the other person isn't comfortable. So like, and then the people pleasing comes in and tells you the only thing that matters is what the other person is feeling, not you. Even like therapists would tell me when I would say that I was masking, that I feel like I couldn't be comfortable, I couldn't be myself around people. They would be like, what is it that you feel like you can't do? And they were really confused and puzzled by it. And I was like, I was like, I didn't even know how to explain it because I didn't have all this knowledge about myself, So obviously there are pros and cons to unmasking, and it's even a privilege to be able to. It's a privilege to be able to mask. It's a privilege to be able to unmask. I think we're all trying to figure out how to do that, and I think it's a matter of context. I think there are situations where it's useful to be able to mask to some extent, and then there are situations where it's better to be able to unmask to some extent. I don't think it's one size fits all kind of thing, and it's very personal. For me personally, I will try to continue to unmask more around my in-laws and even when I'm out of the house, but I don't know how far I'll be able to take it. Like, there are things like my vocal stems that I don't think I'll ever be comfortable doing around anyone except my partner. And maybe that's fine, Maybe I don't have to unmask everything because society isn't ready for that yet, to be honest. I'm still figuring it out, and I hope this video was helpful. I hope it helped you kind of understand maybe what your masking looks like and bring my own experience with masking into the world. I have a Ko-fi page that I will link down below if you'd like to support my channel monetarily. Thanks for watching, thanks for liking and commenting. Don't forget to subscribe if you like my videos. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.